Hello, this is Scott Thorley with AMS Protractor, and here's a quick video to show you how the new linear labor matrix works. In Protractor, go to Home, and then Setup, and I'm going to search for the word labor. You'll see two new entries, labor rate matrix and labor rate matrix rules. Let me explain a little bit how this works. The idea here is that you can have a linear labor matrix that will automatically increase your labor rate based on the amount of billed hours on a ticket. The first step is to add a new labor rate matrix. In this case, I've already added two of them. One I've called shop, which is my shop rate of $98.37, and one I've called no bump, and you'll see how I use that one in a minute. If I double click on the linear labor rate for the shop, you'll see my curve here. Now, I've found with linear labor rates, there's a couple things. What we've found over time is that for linear labor rates, typically from 0 to 1 hour, we leave it at the default labor rate. Now notice this says $98. If I double click on it, it's actually $98.37, which is my shop labor rate. So from 0 to 1, it's not going to change the labor rate. And then you could put in a bunch of data points, but we typically find because this is linear, it's easiest just to pick a second data point at 10 hours or 20 hours with your top labor rate. In this case, at 10 hours, it's going to go to $120 an hour. And as you see on the chart, it's going to linearly go up from $98.37 up to $120 and then stay at $120 for more than 10 hours. Now this is per labor line. In addition, you could have a standard matrix if you wanted that just created a stair step, but we prefer the linear with the gradual increase. Okay, once you've got that set up, now I have another one that's just no bump. So I have basically from 0 to 20, both are set to $98.37. This is going to be no linear labor rate. Now I have the ability to set multiple rules as when to use these. So for my labor rate matrix rules, I currently have two rules in place. One is the no bump rule, and I'll double click to open that. So for this rule, I said if my labor rate is my shop labor rate, and if I have a tag on that labor line called disable labor matrix, I'm going to use the labor rate that is no bump. This is basically an on-off switch. If I manually want to turn off the linear labor matrix for this line, I can add the tag disable labor matrix. Otherwise, this rule is going to go into effect, and it's going to say I'm going to use anytime I see my shop rate, I'm going to use my linear labor rate. Okay, let's see how this works in action. I'm going to go to a ticket, and here I have a break job at 1.2 hours. I'm going to double click into the break job, and what you'll notice is my labor rate was set to my shop rate, but now you see the range that it could go from, and it's automatically adjusting the rate up to 98.85 because this is 1.2 hours or greater than 1 hour. You can see, for example, if I change this to 2 hours, it's going to 100.77, 2.5, 101.98. If I go all the way up to 10 hours, it's going to be my $120 labor rate. Let's put this at 2 hours, and it tells you right here that that linear labor rate matrix is active. Okay, my labor rate is now gone to 100.77. Now let's say I wanted to turn off the linear labor for some reason for this labor line. I could go into the labor line, go into tags, and add my tag that I created called disable labor matrix, and you'll see it drops back down to the 98.37. So this gives you a lot of flexibility with any of these rules to do it by service category, do it by code or title of the package, as well as the description or a labor tag. And you can set up different linear labor matrix for each shop rate. For example, let's say I want to set one up for my diagnostic labor rate. I currently have a diagnostic labor rate set for $145 an hour. I'm going to go back to my labor rate matrix and show you how to create one. I'm going to click Add and say linear labor matrix diagnostic. I just copy and paste that into the description. And this is going to be linear. And I'm going to start at 0 at my 145 labor rate. And I'm going to add the second one, which is at 1 hour. I'm going to stick with my 145 labor rate. And then I'm going to add a third data point. And let's say this time I want to make it up to 20 hours. And my labor rate is going to go as high as 175 an hour. Now I have a linear progression from 145 to 175, capping at 175 after 20 hours. Okay, now I've got that diagnostic labor rate. Now I want to go to my labor rate matrix rules, add a new rule, select my drop down up here and say I want to apply this diagnostic labor rate whenever I see a labor rate code of diagnostic. So now if you see a labor rate code of shop, it's either going to apply it or not apply it if you've got the tag. If it sees a labor rate code of 2, which is diagnostic, it's going to apply that linear matrix. And if you have labor rate code of 3, which is my fleet labor rate, it is not going to change that because I have not set up a linear labor matrix for it. Hopefully that has helped show you how to set this up and use this new feature. It is a fantastic feature for getting a little more profit out of your labor hours. Thank you very much. This has been Scott Thorley with AMS Protractor.